Hey, what's going on, guys? Phil here. Welcome back for some Mechwarrior Online speculation and information as well. On the roadmap that has been updated, we have skill tree reconfigured. As of right now, I don't have a devlog to reference. This video is brought to you by me and our merch store. Make sure to head over there and check out our selection of merch, from shirts to hoodies to coffee mugs, mouse pads and posters. Don't forget the stickers. 10% off right now on all orders over $10. Go forth. Link will be in the description below. But this is a big topic considering thousands of players left the game. That is right. Thousands of players left Mechwarrior Online when this skill tree came out. And this is the first time, really, realistically, they've ever mentioned it as far as being changed. But I feel like we need to talk about it because the reconfigured means a lot more than I think people do. So let's go ahead and dive into it, and I'll sort of explain why I think it's important, but also why I think you need to know about that. To say that the skill tree was controversial is an understatement. This came out years ago, and it did result in potentially thousands of players leaving. And I say potentially because it also was mixed up with other balance changes in the game that made the game less fun, which resulted in one of the biggest and sharpest declines in player numbers we've seen since. Why is this a big deal, and why are they just now tackling it? Obviously, from a Piranha Games standpoint, and we're speaking of Darren and Matt here in regards to their changes to the game, is to make the game easier accessible and more fun for players. Now, the reason why I say this is a big deal is there's a few reasons. One of the biggest drawbacks to the new skill tree that we have in front of you is the amount of clicks that it takes. You can unlock 91 nodes at a time. You can purchase every single node. Now, a little bit of a history lesson here is that we used to have a much easier system that basically was like around 12 to 13 clicks per mech. And so when you went from that to this, it fundamentally made the job harder, also the grind harder. And that's actually a very important thing to remember, is we went from a set of 3, which for those, again, weren't around, is you had to have 3 mechs in, basically elited out. You had 3 different levels. Basically, basic, veteran, and elite status and unlocks before you could get to the master slot. And the master slot was basically an extra module slot that you could throw on radar deprivation or seismic sensor or another UAV or a cool shot, so forth and so on. So we went from that old system to this, and boy, was it a change. Not only was it set up to be a grind, it was set up to replace that 3 of a kind. So right off the bat, you have a system that's set up to replace an antiquated system and replace it with something new, but also to replace a previous grind. So you have that. So you have the grind feature as well. You also have the monetary incentive incentive to purchase the things. Every single node is X amount of C-bills, and it's gone up and down. They initially had it at a value. I think originally it was like 500,000 each. Anyways, long story short, this was not received well. And it also sort of proved a point to some extent that basically they made it hard to get to certain nodes that were really good, i.e. radar deprivation, seismic sensor, or maybe you just wanted mag capacity or enhanced narc. Well, now you had to go through an entire list of things. And the reason I bring all this up is with the term reconfigured. Here's the main issue. If PGI changes this skill tree for the better, let's just say, but they reduce node count down to 45, it's still a loss to the player base. Well, what does that mean? It still means they would have to refund all the XP that they've already refunded once. Now you'd have to have another historic XP to do it again. And now you'd be left with leveling up your mechs all over again, even if it reduced it down by 50%. And I know that's been a proposal over the years to be able to do that, but I don't think that's a win. If anything, I feel like that's still a big hurdle to accomplish that. Now, ultimately, yes, I think if Matt and Darren had their way, they would just replace this. And maybe that's on the road later on, but it doesn't look like it's going to be 2023. So I think what they're doing is they're doing a reconfigure of moving things around. But this is where it gets interesting is that right now I own these nodes and they are active. That also needs to translate into whatever they do, whether it's they shuffle things around, they smash things together, they make a tree out of this tree roots system that we have. Whatever they do, whatever you own has to then be reciprocated to the new system. And that's where it's a little bit tricky. So I don't know what they're necessarily going to do. We haven't had any hints as well. I'm waiting for the devlog to potentially talk about this, but this is a big deal. And what I look at what they're potentially probably going to do is combine nodes in the center or move them around. So maybe it doesn't, you have to go all the way down and get all these extra nodes just to get to enhanced UAC and rack 1. Maybe it's just it splinters off and it's a lot easier. Now, this whole system is a false negative because you think skill tree is choice, but the reality of it is you don't have choice. And I've argued this on my streams quite often, which is this game has a meta, and that meta has the best skill nodes to go for and the worst skill nodes to go for. Speaking of some of the worst ones, we've never really ever touched jump jets here. I have one mech out of the 800 I own or 700 I own. I have one mech with a jump jet skill tree. And that's only because it's a machine gun boat with the Viper that doesn't really utilize the cooldown. So I have extra points that I can just help keep the jump jets a little bit cooler. Outside of that, I literally never touch this jump jet tree. And then generally speaking, I don't ever touch really these fringes of the movement. The reason is because it's a false narrative. There really isn't any choice. There are just better nodes than others. I know it's controversial in saying that, but that's just how I feel. So looking at the Reconfigured, I think what a lot of people want is a node reduction, but I don't think we're going to get that for the stated reasons I talked about before, because they would have to give back the XP, which would mean for a lot of veteran players, it's this exact same frustration that you had before. You went from a few clicks to literally thousands of clicks. Now keep that in mind if you're listening. Some of us have a lot of mechs, and then you'd be irritating your player base even more. The ones that have stuck around even the longest out of everybody, you're going to be putting them through that again. And by the way, just to recall, as that statement from the beginning, this led to thousands of people leaving the game. Now, ultimately, I think what they could do is replace this whole entire thing. And I'll do a video on that one of these days talking about my ideas for it. And they could combine a few things to make life easier. But that isn't what they're doing. And it looks like they are going to be reconfiguring. And a reconfiguring means moving things around. I'm looking forward to this. So I'm very, very optimistic about it. I'm very positive leaning towards that. I think this will be a net step forward, especially for new players coming in. But it will be interesting looking at this. Also to note, while I was streaming, Darren did mention economy is not much of an issue to them anymore. The game is past that. And what I mean by that is the amount of nodes and C-bills it cost. One of the nicest things they could do to make this just simple is just either drastically reduce C-bill count on this, or just lower it significantly. Same thing, XP and so forth. Just make it a lot easier for newer players coming in here. Because if you're a veteran player or you're someone that buys the packs, you get GSP anyways, and you pick up the nodes and you have premium time, and it's really not that big of a deal. But for a new player coming in here, this maze is absolutely terrifying to look at. Now, once you get a hang of it, it's really not that bad, but still, even for me, it's so many clicks, repetitive clicks, time and time again. And this has been a net negative on MWO from the start. So I'm looking forward to this change. And when I hear more information from PGI, hopefully on a devlog soon that we still haven't got, I will do an updated video covering that. But as of right now, I feel like this is a positive thing to hear about, especially happening soon. Potentially in May, it looks like, if not June or July. But, for a stopgap solution, or maybe even a long-term solution, because reality is maybe they don't have the resources, engineers to be able to replace it completely. So, and I suspect that's probably going to be the case. And, priority is priority. Like, they get this, maybe it stops the bleeding. It's not as bad, and at least it's better than what it was. And maybe we can just live with it, considering we've lived with this system for years so far since it was implemented. So anyways, just wanted to give you an update on the skill tree here. So maybe instead of little tiny increments, that you can get to certain nodes quicker. And then if you want those range nodes, you can still branch out and so forth. And I'm sure there will be examples when they talk about it. So I will give you an update on that when it comes. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button, share it with the algorithm and all the things, spread the word of Kerensky. And let me know what you think about the skill tree. If you had a magic wand, would you replace it? And even if you couldn't replace it, are you excited about the notion about a reconfigure? And do you have examples? Do you have ideas? Be interesting. I would have also liked to hear from PGI if they were doing a reconfigured. It'd been great hearing from them so they could get community proposals, but now we're just going to be getting whatever they've been working on. So hopefully it's good. Hopefully they've been talking to the Cauldron, but even with that, I think it would have been cool hearing from them directly. So, you know, keep us informed on that. I hope to see you guys on the next video. Until next time.